My daughter laughed. Stop treating us like we're an ATM. But the message that lit up my phone changed my fortune in seconds. That laugh. I still hear it in my nightmares, sharp and cruel, bouncing off the walls of my own kitchen while I held a damp dishcloth to my chest like a shield. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you, for just a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Elizabeth Ann Morrison. I am 69 years old, and I live, or lived, in the King William Historic District of San Antonio, in an adobe house painted terracotta that my late husband and I bought over 40 years ago. The windows look out onto a small garden where purple bougainvillea explode against the bright Texas sky each spring. The living room floor is old saltillo tile, with cracks that tell stories of tremors, parties, and tears. It smells of cinnamon and cloves on Sundays, of percolating coffee in the mornings, and of damp earth when the summer thunderstorms roll in. That December night, the 18th to be exact, my hands, swollen with arthritis, trembled as I stirred a large pot on the stove. I had spent the entire blessed day in the kitchen, a slow-cooked beef chili simmering with corn, squash, and green beans, Spanish rice with carrots and peas, homemade cornbread I'd mixed until my fingers ached as if they'd been hammered. On the dining room table, I spread the embroidered tablecloth my mother gave me when I married, the one with sunflowers stitched in the corners. I arranged the candles, the fiesta-ware plates I only brought out for special occasions, and in the center, I placed a bouquet of poinsettias, freshly cut from my neighbor Mrs. Gable's garden. My daughter Lydia was arriving from New York. She'd been living there for 5 years with her husband, Arthur, a Boston architect who spoke with a clipped New England accent and wore white linen shirts that looked like they belonged in a magazine. They were coming with Arthur's entire family, his parents, 2 brothers, a pregnant sister-in-law, and even a great-aunt who barely spoke to anyone. I wanted them to feel welcome, to see that here, in this modest San Antonio home, there was still love. There was still a home. I put on my sky-blue cotton dress, the one Lydia gave me years ago that I treasure even though it's faded. I gathered my gray hair into a bun and put on the silver earrings that were my grandmother's. Facing the bathroom mirror, with the yellow light of the bare bulb flickering above my head, I told myself out loud, "They'll be happy. They'll see how much you love them." But when I opened the door at 8 o'clock, no one looked at me. Lydia blew in like a gust of expensive French perfume and shrill laughter. Her hair was blonde, dyed because as a girl she was a brunette like me, pulled back in a high ponytail. Her lips were painted a deep red that contrasted with her European vacation tan. She wore a tight black dress and heels that clicked against the tile like tiny hammer blows to my heart. "Mother!" Lydia cried, opening her arms. But not to me. To Eleanor, Arthur's mother, a tall, slender woman with a perfect mahogany coif, designer glasses, and a pearl necklace that probably cost more than all my furniture combined. Lydia hugged her effusively, kissing both her cheeks while laughing with that sound I no longer recognized, the one that felt forced and high-pitched. I stood in the doorway, my hands clasped over my apron, feeling the cold December air seep in behind me. I swallowed hard. I smiled. I took a step forward. "Honey," I whispered, "I made your favorite. The chili you loved as a little girl, remember? Would you like a bowl?" Lydia turned her head toward me with a slowness that chilled my blood. Her eyes, once warm, honey-colored like mine, now seemed like 2 dark stones. She looked me up and down, with that gesture women use when assessing if something is worth their attention. She pursed her lips. She sighed. "Mom, stop asking silly questions," she said, her tone sharp. "We're not customers at your old diner. Just relax." The word diner left her mouth like an insult, as if the 30 years I spent working at my small lunch counter to pay for her education were something to be ashamed of. Eleanor, the mother-in-law, let out a dry little laugh from behind the glass of red wine she had already poured herself from a bottle she'd brought from New York. "Yes, Elizabeth, don't be so dramatic," she said in that condescending tone people use when they've never had to worry about money. "You've lived your life. Now let them live theirs without so much intensity." The word intensity hung in the air like toxic smoke. I felt the ground swallow me up. My hands began to shake. I glanced down and saw my old faux leather shoes, the seams split on one side. Next to them, Lydia's Italian heels gleamed like jewels under the entryway light. Arthur came in carrying suitcases, followed by his brothers who were chattering and laughing about something. No one greeted me. No one asked how I was. They walked past me as if I were part of the furniture. A shadow without a voice or a name. I retreated to the kitchen. My legs were trembling. I leaned against the gas stove and took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears that were already starting to burn my eyes. The smell of the chili, which had taken 6 hours to prepare, mingled with the aroma of the coffee I had ready in the old enamel pot. I could hear their voices in the living room, talking about trips, restaurants in Manhattan, a house they wanted to buy in the Hamptons. No one mentioned my name. I dried my tears on the hem of my apron and began to ladle the food onto the plates. One by one, carefully, as if each spoonful of chili were a silent prayer. Please see me. Please love me. Please remember who I am. When I placed the plates on the table, Eleanor wrinkled her nose. What is this? She asked, pointing at the chili with her fork as if it were a suspicious object. It's beef chili, ma'am, I replied softly. A traditional Texas dish. Oh, how rustic, she said with a forced smile. I prefer something a bit lighter. Don't you have a salad? Lydia laughed. That laugh. Again. Sharp, cutting, cruel. Mom always goes overboard with the portions, she said, looking at her mother-in-law with a conspiratorial glance. She thinks everyone eats like a construction worker. Arthur chuckled. His brothers joined in. I remained standing by the table, my hands gripping the back of a chair, feeling each laugh like a small stab in my chest. I sat down in silence in the only chair left at the end of the table, far from everyone. I ate slowly, chewing each bite as if it were stone. The chili that had cost me so much effort tasted like ash in my mouth. Around me, they talked, laughed, and toasted with a fancy wine I didn't try because no one offered me any. At some point, Lydia took out her phone and started taking pictures. Selfies with Arthur. Pictures of the food. Pictures with Eleanor. None with me. When I tried to lean in to be in one, she moved the phone. Mom, you'll be blurry over there. Maybe later, okay? That later never came. That night, as I cleared the dirty dishes and washed them in the sink with cold water because the water heater wasn't working right, I heard their voices from the living room. They were talking about me. She's very intense, Eleanor was saying. Is she always like this? Yes, Lydia replied with a sigh. She never learned to let go. Still sees us as children. It must be exhausting, Arthur added. I turned off the faucet. I stood still, my hands submerged in the soapy water, listening as my own daughter tore apart what little was left of my dignity. That night, I slept in my room, alone, with the door shut. I lay on the embroidered sheets I once shared with my husband, before cancer took him 10 years ago. I stroked his photograph on the nightstand and whispered, "What did I do wrong, my love? Where did I go wrong?" He didn't answer. Only the cold December silence drifted in through the slightly open window, bringing with it the scent of bougainvillea and the distant sound of fireworks from a neighborhood party. And I, Elizabeth Ann Morrison, a 69-year-old woman who was once strong, who raised a daughter alone, who worked until her bones ached, who loved without measure and without conditions, fell asleep crying in silence. Because I knew, even if I didn't want to admit it yet, that something inside me had broken that night, something that might never be repaired. The next morning, I woke up with my body aching, as if I'd been beaten. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I heard laughter from the kitchen. I got up slowly, pulling on my worn-out cotton robe with a patch on the left elbow, and walked barefoot down the chilly hall. The saltillo tile was ice-cold under my swollen feet. When I reached the kitchen, I found Lydia making coffee in my Italian coffee maker, the one I bought at a flea market 20 years ago. Eleanor was sitting in my chair, the one I always use for breakfast, flipping through a European design magazine. Arthur was eating a pastry I'd bought the day before from the local bakery, dunking it in milk without asking permission to open the refrigerator. "Good morning," I murmured. No one answered. Lydia didn't even turn around. She kept talking to her mother-in-law about an antique shop in Soho where they had found unique pieces at incredible prices. I stood in the doorway, invisible. I cleared my throat. Nothing. I walked toward the stove to heat some water, and Lydia shifted her body just enough for me to pass, but without looking at me, the way you'd move aside to let a dog go by. As the water boiled for my chamomile tea, because they had already finished all the coffee, I started to remember. The memories came in cold waves. I remembered when Lydia was 7 and got pneumonia. I was working at a bakery back then, from 5 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, earning barely enough to get by. When the doctor said she needed antibiotics that cost $300, I sold my engagement ring, the only valuable thing I owned. I pawned it at a shop on Commerce Street and could never afford to buy it back. Lydia got well. I never had a ring again. I remembered when she was 15 and wanted to go on a school trip to Washington, D.C. All her friends were going. She cried in her room, saying she'd be the only one left behind. The trip cost $2,000. I didn't have it. I worked double shifts for a month at the diner I'd opened with a loan from my sister. I fried bacon, made chili, wiped tables until 11 at night. My hands smelled of grease and bleach. I saved the money. Lydia went on the trip. She came back with smiling photos next to the Lincoln Memorial. She didn't bring me so much as a souvenir magnet. I remembered when she turned 23 and got a scholarship to do her master's degree in New York. She needed money for the plane ticket, for the first month's rent, for the initial tuition payment. $10,000 in total. I took out a second mortgage on this house. The same house where she was now sleeping in the master bedroom while I occupied the small utility room off the back patio. I signed papers I didn't fully understand, with fine print that made me dizzy. The man at the bank explained I would be paying for 15 years. 15 years? I asked. Yes, ma'am, but it's for your daughter's future. I signed. Lydia left for New York with 2 new suitcases I bought her at the flea market. She hugged me at the airport and said, "Thanks, Mom. I'll pay you back for all this." That was 5 years ago. She never sent me a dime. My tea grew cold in my mug as these memories pierced me like knives. I looked at my daughter laughing with Eleanor. So comfortable, so elegant, so distant. When did she become this person? Or was she always like this, and I just refused to see it? "Mom," Lydia said suddenly, startling me, "we need to talk about something important." My heart leaped. I thought maybe this was it. The recognition, the gratitude, the conversation I had been waiting years for. "Of course, honey," I replied, approaching the table with my mug. "Tell me." She exchanged a look with Arthur. He nodded. Eleanor stood up and left the kitchen with her magazine under her arm, but before she left, she shot me a look of pity that made me feel small. Lydia took a deep breath, like someone about to deliver difficult but necessary news. "We've been thinking. Arthur and I want to buy a bigger apartment in New York. One on the Upper East Side. It's a major investment." "That's wonderful, honey," I said, not understanding where this was going. "We need $100,000 for the down payment," she continued, "and we thought you could help us." The words took a few seconds to sink in. $100,000? That was more money than I had ever seen in my life. "Honey, I don't have that kind of money," I whispered, feeling shame creep up my neck like poison ivy. "But you have this house," Arthur said, speaking directly to me for the first time. "You could sell it, or take out another loan against it. In this market, the property is worth at least that." I was speechless. Sell my house? The house where Lydia was born, where my husband died, where every memory of my life was stored? "I can't do that," I said, and my voice sounded firmer than I expected. Lydia's lips tightened. I saw her jaw clench. "I knew you'd say that," she muttered. "Always the same thing. I can't. I don't have it. It's too much. Mom, we're not kids anymore. We need to grow, to build our future. And you're still clinging to this old house that isn't even in a great neighborhood anymore." "This house was paid for with my work," I replied, feeling tears welling up. "With my hands, with my back." "Exactly," Lydia exclaimed, standing up abruptly. "It's almost paid off. It's served its purpose. What do you need it for? To die alone in? Arthur and I could give you a room in our new apartment. You could come live with us. It would be better for everyone. The word room echoed in my ears. Not home, not a place. A room, like what you give to the hired help. I need to think about it, was all I could manage. Sure, think about it, Lydia replied coldly. But don't take too long. The offer on the apartment won't last forever. She walked out of the kitchen with Arthur following her. I was left alone, sitting on the hard wooden chair, staring at my cold cup of tea. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to set the mug down on the table. That afternoon, while they went out to stroll the river walk and buy tourist trinkets they would never use, I stayed home and cleaned. I was sweeping the back patio where my pots of geraniums and basil grow when I found an old shoebox hidden behind some loose boards. I opened it. Inside were letters. Letters I had written to Lydia during her first year in New York, back when we didn't have smartphones and communicated by mail. Letters where I told her about my day, sent her recipes, asked if she was eating well, if she was getting enough sleep. Letters filled with, "I miss you. I love you. I'm so proud of you." I opened them one by one. They were all still sealed. She had never read them. She must have brought them back on a previous trip and just left them here. Forgotten. Unimportant. I sat on the concrete patio floor, with those unopened letters in my lap. And I wept. I wept for the daughter I raised. I wept for the mother I was. I wept for the years I gave, waiting for the day she would look at me with love instead of indifference. When I stopped crying, it was already getting dark. The city lights were beginning to twinkle. I heard the ice cream truck go down the street, its jingle fading in the distance. Life went on outside, oblivious to my pain. I got up. I put the letters back in their box. I hid it in the same spot. And as I walked back into the house, my knees aching and my heart broken, I asked myself for the first time in my life, what if all this sacrifice was for nothing? What if she never loved me the way I loved her? That night I made dinner again. Chili rellenos with rice and beans. They ate, laughed, drank Modelo beer that Arthur bought at the 7-Eleven. I sat at the end of the table, eating in silence, chewing each bite as if it were ground glass. And at some point during that horrible meal, as I listened to Eleanor tell stories about her vacations on Martha's Vineyard, something inside me began to harden, like wet cement suddenly setting into its final shape. It wasn't anger yet. It wasn't a decision. It was just a cold premonition, a small voice inside me whispering, "This can't go on." 2 days later, it was my birthday. 69 years. No one mentioned it. I woke up early as always, when the sky still has that violet hue that precedes the dawn. I stayed in bed for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks that formed imaginary maps. I thought that maybe Lydia would remember. Maybe there would be a surprise. Maybe when I went downstairs I would find a cake, some flowers, even just a sincere hug. I got up. I splashed cold water on my face in the bathroom with the peeling tiles. I put on the same blue dress as always. I went downstairs slowly, clinging to the banister because my knees crack with every step. The house was empty. On the kitchen table was a note written in Lydia's perfect handwriting. "We went to the hill country with the Cabots. Back tonight. There are beans in the fridge. Nothing more. No, good morning. No, take care. And certainly, no, happy birthday." I sat at the kitchen table with that note in my hands. I read it 3 times, as if the words might magically change. The Cabots were Arthur's family. All those people had come to Texas, were sightseeing in my city, and they didn't even invite me. Worse, it was my birthday, and they left without me. I heated the beans mentioned in the note. They were hard, undercooked, probably from a cheap restaurant. I ate them straight from the pot, standing by the stove with a cold tortilla. That was my birthday breakfast. Beans, silence, loneliness. The phone rang once. It was my friend Linda, the only friend I had left after years of shutting myself in to care for my sick husband and then working to support Lydia. "Happy birthday, Liz. Are we doing anything today? A coffee?" I made an excuse, saying I had company. I didn't want to admit that my company had abandoned me on this very day. I spent the day cleaning. I washed the sheets Lydia and Arthur had used. I scrubbed the bathroom. I dusted the furniture. I watered the plants on the patio. Each task was a way to not think, to not feel, to not collapse right there in the middle of the living room. At 3 in the afternoon, I sat on the old armchair in the living room, the one my husband bought when Lydia was born. It's worn, with the stuffing coming out of one side, but it's comfortable. I took the photo album I keep on the bookshelf. I turned the pages slowly. There was Lydia as a baby, wrapped in a pink blanket my mom had knitted. Lydia on her first day of school, with her blue plaid uniform and her backpack almost bigger than her. Lydia at her middle school graduation, smiling in her gown. Lydia at the airport the day she left for New York, hugging me tightly while I tried not to cry, so I wouldn't ruin her moment. In every photo, I was in the background. Out of focus, cut in half, or completely out of the frame. It had always been this way. I was the one taking the pictures, organizing the moments, creating the memories, but I was never fully in them. I closed the album, I pressed it to my chest, and there, alone in my living room, surrounded by walls that knew all my secrets, I cried. I cried without a sound, because I had learned to cry silently so as not to bother anyone. The tears fell on the album's plastic cover, creating small circles that slid slowly toward the edges. The sun began to set. The afternoon shadows stretched across the floor. I lit a candle that I always keep in front of the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe on the shelf, not exactly for religious devotion, but because the flame kept me company. The flame flickered with the breeze coming through the open window. At 9 o'clock, I heard the car pull up outside. Laughter, voices in English. The door opened and the whole family came in. They were tanned, happy, smelling of sunscreen and beer. They carried bags of tourist souvenirs. "Mom, are you still awake?" Lydia asked in a surprised tone, as if it were strange for me to be in my own living room at 9 at night. "Yes," I replied simply. "The hill country was incredible," Arthur commented, dropping onto the armchair next to me. "You should go sometime." No one said, "You should have come with us." Just, "You should go sometime," as if I were just another tourist, not the owner of the house where they were staying for free. "Today was my birthday," I said. The words came out on their own before I could stop them. An uncomfortable silence fell. Lydia stopped halfway up the stairs. She turned slowly. "Today?" she asked, frowning. "Are you sure?" "December 19th, I replied. Like every year for the past 69. I saw her search her memory, her face showing that moment of recognition, immediately followed by discomfort. Eleanor looked at her son. Arthur's brothers checked their phones to avoid the situation. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry," Lydia said, but her voice was automatic, without real emotion. "It's just that with all the travel and the vacation, it completely slipped my mind." It slipped my mind. 4 words that perfectly summarized how much I mattered in her life. She had forgotten me, the way you forget to pay a minor bill, the way you forget to buy milk at the store. "Don't worry," I lied. "It's not important." See? She understands," Lydia said to Arthur, as if my understanding justified her negligence. "Mom's never been one to make a fuss about these things." They all went to their rooms. I stayed in the living room a while longer, watching the candle burn. The wax melted, forming small white rivers down the sides of the glass. I identified with that candle, consuming myself slowly, giving light and warmth to others, melting away until I disappeared. That night, in my room, I took out my old cell phone. I had a message from Linda. "Hope you had a beautiful day, my friend. I love you." One from the lady at the bakery where I buy bread. "Happy B-Day, Mrs. M, God bless." Another from the man at the stationery store. "Many happy returns." People who barely knew me had remembered my birthday. My own daughter, for whom I gave everything, had forgotten. I opened my nightstand drawer. I took out an old notebook where I sometimes wrote things. Thoughts. Prayers. Complaints I didn't dare say out loud. I took a pen and wrote with a trembling hand. "Today, I turned 69. No one remembered. When did I become invisible? When did I stop mattering?" I closed the notebook. I turned off the light. I lay in the dark with my eyes open, listening to the cheerful voices coming from the master bedroom. Lydia and Arthur were laughing. They were telling stories about their day, planning their next excursion. And I, in my small room off the back patio, Asked myself for the first time something that terrified me. What if I just disappeared? How long would it take them to notice? Would they even care? The answer came on its own, cold and clear as well water. Probably not. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, counting the hours until dawn. And with each passing hour, that cold premonition that had started days ago became more solid, more real, more impossible to ignore. Something had to change, or I would break completely. And this time, I didn't know if I would have the strength to pick up the pieces. The next morning dawned gray. Heavy clouds covered San Antonio like a metal roof. I got up with my body aching more than ever, as if someone had beaten me with a bat during the night. Every joint protested. It was hard to even stand up. I shuffled down to the kitchen. I needed my chamomile tea, something hot to make me feel like I was still alive. But when I arrived, I found Eleanor sitting in my spot, again, with a cup of tea in her hand. My tea. The box was open on the table. "Good morning, Elizabeth," she said without looking up from her phone. "I hope you don't mind. I helped myself to some of your tea. The kind we brought from New York is finished." She wasn't asking for permission. She was informing me, like someone announcing they've used your bathroom, not like someone taking something that doesn't belong to them. "No problem," I mumbled, though something inside me cracked. I opened the pantry to find something else to drink, maybe instant coffee, maybe hot chocolate mix. But the pantry was nearly empty. Arthur and his family had consumed everything over the past few days. The sugar, the cinnamon, the crackers I saved for my afternoons, even the packets of oatmeal I bought on sale. "Is there nothing to eat in this house?" Eleanor asked with a gesture of disgust. "I thought you Southerners had big breakfasts." "I have to go to the market," I replied in a flat voice. "Oh, good. You could pick up some prosciutto, some manchego cheese, brioche bread." She listed off without looking up from her phone. "Arthur misses a proper breakfast." Each request was an order disguised as a suggestion. And I nodded. I always nodded. I took my shopping bag, the cloth one with embroidered flowers I've used for 15 years. I checked my wallet. I had $30. That was it until my next Social Security check arrived in a week. Prosciutto cost $20 for a tiny package. The cheese was just as much. Brioche was only sold at expensive bakeries downtown. With $30, I could barely afford tortillas, beans, and some fruit. "I'll see what I can find," I said. I left the house without saying goodbye. No one noticed me leave. I walked the 8 blocks to the local H-E-B. My old shoes squeaked with every step. The sky threatened rain. I arrived at the store with my legs trembling, not just from the effort, but from the helplessness that was eating me alive. I walked through the aisles. Mr. Rodriguez from the produce section greeted me. "How are you, Mrs. Morrison? Haven't seen you in a few days." "I'm well, Mr. Rodriguez. I have company." "Oh, that's wonderful. Family is the most important thing," he said with that honest smile only good people have. "What can I get for you today?" I bought what I could afford. A bag of pinto beans, a pound of tomatoes, serrano peppers, 2 small avocados, tortillas. The basics, the cheap stuff, what my poverty allowed while my daughter was sightseeing, taking pictures for her Instagram. When I got home, Lydia was in the living room on a work call. I froze in the doorway when I heard her say, "Yes, my mother is..." How do I say this? She's very simple. Basic needs, you know. A small Social Security check, that's it. No real assets. Just this old house in a working-class neighborhood. I stood there, paralyzed, the grocery bags hanging from my arms. That's how she described me? Simple? Basic needs? An old house? As if I were a problem to be explained away? An embarrassment to be justified to her sophisticated New York friends. I came in, making noise with the bags to let her know I was there. She ended the call immediately. "Mom, you're back," she said with a fake smile. "Did you get what I asked for?" "I couldn't afford it," I replied, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. Her face changed, the smile vanished. "What do you mean you couldn't afford it? It was a simple list. Prosciutto is $20, Lydia. The cheese is just as much. I only had $30 for the whole week." "Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic. You could have used your credit card." "I don't have a credit card, honey. I live on my Social Security." $1,200 a month. She fell silent. I think in that moment she realized, or pretended to realize, that I didn't live in the same reality she did, that while she was buying designer bags in Manhattan, I was calculating if I could afford dish soap. "Fine," she finally said, with that annoyed tone she used when something inconvenienced her. "Then just make whatever you bought. We're hungry. We're hungry. Not, thank you for going to the store. Not sorry I asked for expensive things. Just, we're hungry, like someone speaking to a cook. I made beans with chili. I heated tortillas. I chopped tomatoes with onion and cilantro to make a salsa. I put everything on the table. They sat down and ate with resigned looks, like people settling for second-rate food. In New York, we eat a much more varied diet," Arthur commented, trying the beans with suspicion. "This is very heavy for a European stomach," Eleanor added, leaving half her plate untouched. I ate in silence. The comments didn't even hurt anymore. They had hollowed me out so much there was nothing left to injure. After they ate, Lydia stood up and announced, "Mom, I need to talk to you. Come to my room." I followed her up the stairs. We entered what had been my marital bedroom, the room where I slept with my husband for 30 years, where Lydia was conceived, where I watched over my husband when he was sick. Now it was her room. She closed the door. Her expression was serious. "Mom, we have a problem," she said, crossing her arms. "What's wrong?" I asked, feeling fear climb my spine. Arthur looked over the house paperwork. "I don't understand why you never told me." "Told you what?" "That you still owe for 8 years on the second mortgage. We thought the house was paid off." I was speechless. They thought? Arthur had gone through my papers? My private documents? "You went through my things?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "Don't be dramatic. They were in the desk drawer. It wasn't on purpose," she lied with perfect ease. "The point is, you lied to us." "I never lied. You never asked me about the mortgage." "You should have told us," she raised her voice. "How are we supposed to use this house as collateral for our loan if you still owe money on it?" There it was. The naked truth. They didn't care about me. They didn't care about my roof over my head. They only wanted to use my house as collateral for their plans, for their New York apartment, for their perfect life. "This house is mine," I said, and I felt something inside me begin to stir, something dark and furious that had been dormant for too long. "I'm paying for it with my pension. It's not your problem." "Of course it's my problem. I'm your daughter. I'm going to inherit this house someday," she yelled, and her words were like slaps. Someday, when I was dead, that's what she was waiting for. My death, my disappearance. To get her hands on the only thing I had left. "Get out of my room," I said, my voice trembling. "Your room?" She laughed cruelly. "Mom, you're confused. This is my room now. You sleep in the utility room, remember?" The words hit me like stones. The utility room. That's how she saw me, as the maid who slept in the back room. I got out of there before she could see me cry. I stumbled down the stairs, clinging to the banister. I got to my room. Yes, the utility room, and locked the door. I sat on the bed. My chest heaved with ragged breaths. I felt like I was suffocating. The walls were closing in. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands. I dialed the number for my sister Rose, who lives in Florida. It rang 4 times before she answered. "Liz, what's wrong?" she asked, worried because I never call in the middle of the afternoon. "Rose," I could barely speak. "I need you to tell me the truth. Have I always been this foolish? Have I always been this blind? What's going on?" And then the dam broke. I told her everything. The forgotten birthday, the humiliations, the comments, the unopened letters, the demand to sell my house, everything. I spoke for 20 minutes without stopping, crying, choking on words I had held back for years. When I finished, Rose was silent for a few seconds. Then she said something that would change everything. "Liz, do you remember the money Mom left for you when she died?" "What money? Mom didn't have anything." "Yes, she did. She made me swear not to tell you until you really, truly needed it. She sold her little house in Louisiana 3 years ago, the one she inherited from our grandmother." My heart stopped. "How much?" I whispered. $80,000. It's in a bank account in your name. Mom left specific instructions. The money could only be released when I decided you truly needed it. Not for medical emergencies, not for family loans. For you, for your freedom. $80,000. More money than I had seen in my entire life. Liz, Rose continued, I think that time is now. I hung up the phone. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the peeling paint on the wall of my utility room. My mother had died 3 years ago, and for all that time she had left a gift waiting for me. An escape hatch. One last way of telling me, daughter, value yourself. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of something new, something dangerous, hope. That night, I didn't eat dinner with them. I said I had a headache and locked myself in my room. I heard their laughter from the living room, the clinking of glasses, the Spanish guitar music they put on the old stereo that had belonged to my husband. They were celebrating something, probably celebrating that they would soon have my house as collateral for their New York dreams. I sat on my bed with my phone in my hands. Rose had texted me all the bank account details, the number, the branch, the instructions to activate it. I just needed to go in person with my ID. $80,000. The number spun in my head like a top. It was freedom. It was dignity. It was my mother's voice from the grave telling me, that's enough, Liz. You've suffered enough. But there was something else in Rose's message. Something she had mentioned almost at the end of the call. Mom also left a letter for you. I have it saved. She said you should only open it when you're ready to make a life-changing decision. Was I ready? I looked around my room. The damp walls, the window that looked out onto the patio where I hung the laundry, the sagging mattress, the rickety nightstand. This was my place in my own house. The utility room. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Yes, I was ready. The next morning, I got up before everyone else. I took a cold shower because I didn't want to wait for the water heater. I put on my least worn dress, the navy blue one I used for special occasions. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back had deep, dark circles, wrinkles that multiplied like maps of pain, chapped lips. But there was something different in her eyes. A spark. Small, trembling, but it was there. I left the house without making a sound. I walked the 15 blocks to the bank branch on the main avenue. My feet hurt with every step, but I kept going. The sky was clear. It was cold. A San Antonio December morning, where the air cuts your skin. I arrived at the bank just as it was opening. A young woman helped me. I explained the situation. I showed my ID. She checked the computer. She frowned. Ma'am, it says here this account has special instructions. It needs authorization from the cosigner, Rose Morrison. That's my sister. She's already authorized it, I explained. The girl made a few calls. I waited on a plastic chair, watching other customers come and go. People in a hurry. People with problems. People with lives that were moving forward while mine had been stuck for so long. After 30 minutes, the girl returned, smiling. All set, Mrs. Morrison. Your sister confirmed. Would you like to make a withdrawal or a transfer? I want to open a new account, in my name only, and transfer everything into it. Perfect. I just need a few details. An hour later, I walked out of the bank with a new debit card, a checkbook, and $80,000 in an account that only I could touch. No one else. Not Lydia, not Arthur, not any bank that wanted to take my house. I walked through downtown San Antonio as if I were floating. Everything looked different. The buildings seemed taller. The sky bluer. Even the air smelled different. As if someone had opened all the windows in the world and let in fresh oxygen. I stopped at a cafe. One of those I never dared to enter because they were expensive. I ordered a cappuccino and a chocolate croissant. I sat by the window. The cappuccino cost $6. Before, that would have seemed outrageous. Today, I drank it slowly, savoring every sip, feeling the hot coffee fill not just my stomach, but something deeper. An older woman sat at the table next to me. She had a book. She read peacefully, sipping her coffee, existing for herself. I watched her with envy. When had I ever been that woman? Was I ever? I took out my phone. I texted Rose. I went to the bank. I have the money. Thank you. Thank you for taking care of Mom's last gift. She replied immediately. When do you want me to send the letter? Today, now. 10 minutes later, a photo of the letter appeared in my messages. It was written in my mother's shaky handwriting, the script that had become uneven in her last years due to Parkinson's. The paper was yellowed, creased. I held the phone close to my eyes and read, "My dearest Elizabeth, if you're reading this, it means Rose decided the time has come. I trust her judgment. She was always the more practical of my daughters, while you were the most loving. And that, honey, has been both your blessing and your curse. I am giving you this money not to spend on others, not to lend to Lydia, not to solve problems that aren't yours. I am giving it to you so you can save yourself. Because if you don't save yourself, no one will. Lydia doesn't value you. I know this. I'm her grandmother and I love her. But I'm not blind. From the time she was a little girl, she learned to take everything from you without giving anything in return. And you let her. You thought that was how you bought her love. But love can't be bought, honey. It's given freely. Or it isn't love. Sell the house if you have to. Go somewhere far away. Start over. You're in your 60s, not your 90s. There is still time. There is still life. But only if you decide to take it. You don't owe anyone anything. You've done your duty. You raised your daughter. You educated her. You gave her everything. You've paid your dues. Now, live for you. I love you. I always have. And wherever I am now, I will be proud when you finally choose yourself. Your loving mother, Helen. Tears fell onto the phone screen. I had to wipe it with my napkin. People were looking at me. I didn't care. I cried right there, in that downtown cafe, with my cappuccino getting cold and my croissant half-eaten. My mother knew me. She had always known me, and she loved me enough to leave me this way out, this chance, this final push. I got home around noon. Lydia was in the living room with her laptop working. She didn't even look up when I came in. "Where were you?" she asked without real interest. "I went to the bank," I replied. She mumbled, typing something. "Hey, we're out of toilet paper. Can you go buy some?" Something inside me clicked, like a switch being flipped off for good. "No," I said. Lydia stopped typing. She looked up slowly, as if she hadn't heard correctly. "What did you say?" I said no. "You can buy it." Her face transformed. Surprise, then confusion, then annoyance. "Mom, don't start with your drama again. I just asked you to buy toilet paper. And I told you no. You have legs. You have money. There's a convenience store 3 blocks away." She stood up. She stared at me as if I'd said something obscene. "What is wrong with you? Are you sick?" "No. For the first time in years, I'm perfectly fine." "You're acting very strange," she said, narrowing her eyes. "Did you go to the doctor? Did they tell you something?" I laughed. It was a short, dry, humorless sound. "I didn't go to the doctor, Lydia. I went to the bank, and I opened an account, in my name only." Her expression shifted. I saw her calculating, her brain processing what that meant. "What account? Where did you get money? That's not your problem." "Of course it's my problem." She raised her voice. "If you've been hiding money while asking us to be understanding of your situation, if you've been pretending to be poor." "I never pretended anything. I am poor. I live on a miserable pension, but it turns out my mother left me something, and she decided that only I could use it." "Grandma? Grandma left you money? How much?" "Enough." Arthur walked in just then, alerted by the raised voices. "What's going on here?" "My mother has been hiding money," Lydia told him, pointing at me as if I were a criminal. "I wasn't hiding it. I didn't even know it existed until yesterday," I explained with a calm that surprised even me. "How much is it?" Arthur asked directly, getting straight to the point. "It's none of your business, Arthur. If we're talking about a family inheritance, it is our business," he insisted. "Lydia is your only daughter. She has a right to it." "She has a right to nothing," I said, my voice as hard as stone. "My mother left it to me, with specific instructions not to share it with anyone." "That's illegal," Arthur said. "Inheritances are divided among descendants. Not when there's a will that says otherwise. And there is." I was lying. I didn't know if there was a will. But something told me my mother had been smart enough to protect that money from anyone who might try to take it from me. Lydia sank onto the couch. She put her face in her hands. I can't believe this. My own mother, hiding things from me. Like you hid from me that you wanted to use my house as collateral without asking. I shot back. That's different. No, it's exactly the same. Except I'm not going to allow it anymore. Eleanor appeared on the stairs. She had heard everything. Elizabeth, don't be selfish, she said in that fake maternal tone. Think of your daughter, of your grandchild on the way. I froze. What grandchild? Lydia glared at me with hatred. She had just ruined her own surprise. Or her weapon. I wasn't sure which. I'm pregnant, she said flatly. 2 months. We were going to tell you on Christmas. I should have felt joy. I should have run to hug her. I should have cried with excitement. But all I felt was emptiness. Congratulations, I said without emotion. Is that it? Congratulations? Lydia screamed. I'm going to make you a grandmother and all you can say is congratulations. What do you want me to say? That you'll help us. That you'll support us. A baby costs money, Mom. We need that bigger apartment now more than ever. There it was. The truth. The pregnancy wasn't a joy to be shared. It was a strategy, a way to manipulate me, to make sure I would open my wallet and hand over everything I had. I wish you the best, I said, walking toward the stairs. But that baby is your responsibility, not mine. I went up to my room. I closed the door. I lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. A grandchild. A grandchild was coming, and I felt nothing but fear. Fear that this baby would be another chain. Another way to tie me down. Another excuse for them to keep taking from me until there was nothing left. I picked up my phone. I texted Rose. I think I need to leave. Soon. Before it's too late. She replied, Come to Florida, stay with me, for as long as you need. I closed my eyes. For the first time in weeks, I slept deeply. No nightmares, no guilt. Just the quiet peace of someone who had finally said, no more. The next 3 days were a silent war. Lydia stopped speaking to me directly. When she needed something, she told Arthur, and he would relay the message as if I were deaf or invisible. Elizabeth, Lydia says, can you do her laundry? Elizabeth, we need you to make dinner earlier. I would nod without replying. I did the bare minimum. I no longer ran to please them. Eleanor gave me looks of contempt every time we passed in the hall. One afternoon, while I was hanging laundry on the line in the backyard, she approached me with her wine glass in hand. The afternoon sun lit up her pearl necklace like a string of bright teeth. Elizabeth, may I speak frankly? She asked, though she didn't wait for an answer. You're making a mistake. Lydia is your daughter. That baby will be your grandchild. Family is everything. I don't know what the customs are here in Texas, but in New England, we take care of our own. I continued hanging a sheet. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stop. In Texas, we take care of our own too, I answered without looking at her. But there comes a time when you have to take care of yourself, or there's nothing left to give. That's selfishness, she pronounced, taking a sip of wine. Pure selfishness from an old woman who doesn't know what to do with her life anymore. I turned to face her. I looked her straight in the eye. You don't know me. You don't know anything about my life. You don't know what I gave, what I sacrificed. So I ask you, with all due respect, not to comment on things you don't understand. She was dumbfounded. I suppose no one ever spoke to her like that. She turned on her heel and stomped back into the house in her expensive shoes. I smiled. It was a small smile, but it was mine. That night, while I was preparing a simple dinner of quesadillas and refried beans, I heard raised voices from the living room. I approached quietly. They were all there. Lydia, Arthur, Eleanor, and his brothers. We need a plan, Arthur was saying. That house is worth money, and if the old woman won't cooperate, we have to find another way. The old woman. That's what they called me when they thought I couldn't hear. We could talk to a lawyer, one of the brothers suggested. If she's not mentally competent to handle her finances, Lydia could file for legal guardianship. She's not crazy, Lydia said, frustrated. She's just being stubborn. Ever since my grandmother left her that money, she's changed. It's like she doesn't care about us anymore. Maybe she never really did. Eleanor commented. Some mothers are like that, cold, distant. Me, cold. Me, distant. The words pierced me like needles. The woman who had given every dollar, every minute, every tear of her life for her daughter, was now being accused of not caring. I went back to the kitchen. I served the quesadillas on mismatched plates. I called them for dinner. They ate in silence, shooting me sideways glances. I ate in silence too, but for the first time, it wasn't a silence of submission. It was a silence of decision. The next day, while they went out to another tourist town to buy more crafts they would never use, I picked up my phone and called a number I had saved years ago. Ms. Martinez, a lawyer who had helped my friend Linda with her divorce. Ms. Martinez, this is Elizabeth Morrison. I don't know if you remember me. Of course I do, Mrs. Morrison. How can I help you? I told her everything. The house, the mortgage, Arthur's veiled threats, my mother's money, the fear that they would try to take everything from me. I talked for 20 minutes without stopping, my voice breaking at times. Mrs. Morrison, the lawyer said when I finished, I need you to come to my office. Bring all your documents, the deed to the house, bank statements, any text messages or recordings where they threaten you. We are going to protect your assets. Can we do that? I asked, and it sounded like a plea. Not only can we must. You are an adult woman of sound mind. No one can force you to sell or give away anything that is yours. And if they try to prove mental incompetence without grounds, that is elder abuse. There are laws that protect you. Those words were like water in a desert. Laws that protect you. I never knew they existed. That afternoon I went to her office. It was on the second floor of an old building downtown. I climbed the stairs slowly, clinging to the rail. Ms. Martinez was a woman in her 50s, short hair, thick glasses, with a desk piled high with folders and a coffee pot that was always on. She reviewed my documents carefully, took notes, made calculations. Your house is worth approximately $250,000 in the current market, she said. You owe $30,000 on the mortgage. If you paid off the mortgage with your mother's money, you'd have $50,000 left over. And you'd have a fully paid off property that no one could touch. And them? Could they do anything legally to take it from me? Only if you sign something. Or if they can prove with medical evaluations that you have advanced dementia or something similar. Do you have any such diagnosis? No. Just arthritis and high blood pressure. But my mind is fine. Then you are protected. Now, I would recommend something else. A will. Clear and specific. Where you can state exactly what you want to happen with your house when you're gone. If you want to leave it to your daughter, fine. But you can set conditions. Or you can leave it to whomever you wish. The idea made me dizzy. Could I do that? Could I decide? Think about it, Ms. Martinez said with a kind smile. For now, we're going to draft a document where you declare that you are of sound mind, that you have not been coerced, and that any decision regarding your assets is yours alone. This will help us if they try anything legal. I signed papers. I paid her fee with my new debit card. I walked out of that office feeling something strange. Something I hadn't felt in years. Control. Control over my own life. When I arrived home at dusk, I walked into a scene that froze my blood. Lydia was in the living room, weeping dramatically. Eleanor was hugging her. Arthur was pacing back and forth with his phone in his hand. The brothers were murmuring to each other. What happened? I asked, setting my purse by the door. Lydia lifted her head. Her eyes were red, but something in her expression felt false. Calculated. I had some spotting, she said in a weak voice. I went to the doctor. He says it's a threatened miscarriage. I need complete bed rest and... She paused dramatically. I need to be calm. No stress. All eyes turned to me. As if I were the stress. As if I were the one to blame. I'm so sorry, honey, I said, and I meant it. What exactly did the doctor say? That she needs to be cared for. Bed rest. A peaceful home. Arthur answered for her. That's why we've made a decision, Elizabeth. We're going to stay here longer. Until the baby is born. Lydia can't travel in her condition. The words fell on me like concrete blocks. Stay? Until the baby was born? That was 7 months. 7 more months of this. This is my house. I said quietly. And she is your daughter, Eleanor retorted. Your pregnant daughter who needs you? Or has your selfishness gone so far that you'd risk your own grandchild? There it was. The perfect trap. If I said no, I was the monster grandmother who was endangering the baby. If I said yes, I lost my home, my peace, my sanity for 7 more months. I looked at Lydia. I searched her eyes for something real, some trace of the girl I raised, but I only found calculation, manipulation. She was using her pregnancy as a weapon. I need to think about it, I said. There's nothing to think about, Arthur exploded. She's your daughter. She's pregnant and at risk. What kind of mother are you? One who's had enough, I replied, surprising myself. The silence was absolute. Even the wall clock seemed to stop ticking. What did you say? Lydia whispered. I said I've had enough. I'm tired of being invisible, of being the maid, of being the ATM, of being the one to blame for everything that doesn't go your way. Mom? You're not making any sense, Lydia said, and I saw her exchange a look with Arthur. Maybe you should lie down, or see a doctor. Maybe you have something neurological. And there it was, the plan I had overheard days before, to declare me mentally incompetent. There is nothing neurologically wrong with me, I said firmly. I am 69 years old, and I am perfectly sane. And I am not going to let you use me anymore. I'm asking for your help, Lydia shouted, getting to her feet. I'm pregnant and at risk, and all you can think about is yourself. You think about yourself, I replied. You and your husband. You're adults. You have jobs. You have money. Figure it out. We don't have enough money, Arthur admitted. That's why we need your help. That's why we need you to support us with the house. My house is not for sale. It's not collateral for anything. It's mine. Eleanor stood up, furious. You are a selfish woman. A bitter, selfish old woman who doesn't deserve a family. Her words should have hurt. A week ago, they would have destroyed me. But today, they only made me more certain of my decision. Maybe so, I said calmly. But it's my house, and it's my life, and I've made up my mind. I went up to my room. I locked the door. I sat on the bed and trembled for a full 10 minutes. But I didn't cry. I had no regrets. I took out my phone. I texted Rose. I need to get out of here, soon. Can I come tomorrow? Come whenever you want. Your room is ready. I pulled an old suitcase from under the bed. I started to pack. Clothes, documents, the few photos that mattered to me. It wasn't much. My whole life fit into one medium-sized suitcase. Downstairs, I could hear voices, arguing, planning, but I didn't care anymore. For the first time in my life, I was going to choose myself, and if that made me the villain of this story, so be it. At least I would be free. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the bed, staring at the half-packed suitcase, listening to the sounds of the house. Arthur's footsteps up and down the stairs, the muffled voices coming from the master bedroom, the creak of the old floorboards. Every sound was a reminder that I didn't belong here anymore, or maybe I never had. At 5 a.m, as the sky was just beginning to lighten, I heard a knock on my door. 3 sharp, impatient raps. Mom, open up. I need to talk to you. It was Lydia. Her voice sounded different, softer, almost sweet. I opened the door. She stood there in her pajamas, her hair loose around her shoulders. No makeup. She looked younger, more like the girl she once was. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. She came in and sat on my bed, next to the suitcase. She looked at it. Then she looked at me. Are you leaving? She asked. And for the first time in weeks, her voice held something like vulnerability. Yes. Where? To your Aunt Rose's. In Florida. For how long? I don't know. As long as I need. She was quiet. She ran her fingers over the fabric of one of my blouses sticking out of the suitcase. An old, faded blouse with a mismatched button because the original was lost years ago. Mom, she finally said, I'm sorry if I've made you feel bad. That wasn't my intention. The words sounded right, but there was something empty about them, like someone reading from a script without feeling the lines. Lydia, I replied, sitting down next to her. I don't believe you. She looked up, surprised. What? I don't believe you. You're saying what you think I want to hear, but you don't feel it. And we both know it. Her eyes hardened. There it was. The mask was slipping. You know what? You're right. I'm not sorry. Because I didn't do anything wrong, she said, standing up. Everything I've asked for is normal. Children expect support from their parents. That's how family works. Support has limits, Lydia. And I reached mine a long time ago. Limits? She laughed humorlessly. You don't know what limits are. You gave me everything when I was a kid. You spoiled me. And now you're complaining that I expect the same. Her words hit me like a slap. Was it my fault? Had I created this monster myself? You're right, I admitted. I did give you everything, and that was my mistake. I didn't teach you the value of things. I didn't teach you gratitude. I didn't teach you that people are not inexhaustible resources. Oh, please, she scoffed. Don't play the victim. You chose to be a mother. You chose to sacrifice. Nobody forced you. I chose to love you. That's different. Love doesn't come with a price tag, she said coldly. If you gave me things expecting something in return, that's not love. That's a transaction. I was speechless. Is that how she saw me? As some merchant of affection? I never expected anything in return, I whispered. I just hoped you would see me, that you would value me, that you would treat me like a person, not a tool. You're my mother. Your job is to support me. Always. No. My job was to raise you, to educate you, to prepare you for the world. And I did that. I'm done. Lydia took a step toward me. Her eyes shone with something that could have been tears or could have been rage. If you leave tomorrow, she said, her voice trembling, if you abandon me now, when I'm pregnant and scared, I will never forgive you. Then don't forgive me, I answered, my voice steadier than I felt. But I'm not staying here to be your emotional punching bag. She stood still, looking at me as if she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't recognize myself either. This woman who said no so firmly wasn't the Elizabeth she knew. I'm having a baby, she said, and now there were real tears. Your grandchild. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It means everything, I said, feeling my own heart break. But if I stay, if I keep giving you everything you ask for, I will disappear. And then I can't be a grandmother to anyone because I won't exist anymore. You're being dramatic. I'm being honest. For the first time in years, I'm being honest. Lydia walked to the door. She stopped in the doorway. Without turning back, she said, If you leave, don't come back. You don't get to walk in and out of our lives when it's convenient for you. If you choose to leave tomorrow, you choose to lose us forever. And she left. She closed the door without a sound. That silence was worse than a slam. I stood there trembling. Had I done the right thing? Or had I just destroyed the only relationship that mattered to me? I finished packing on autopilot. I folded clothes, put away shoes, tucked in the photo album, my mother's rosary, the deed to the house. Everything that was truly mine fit into one suitcase and a backpack. At 7 a.m, I came downstairs with my luggage. I had called an Uber. It would be here in 10 minutes. The house was quiet. I thought everyone was asleep. But when I got to the living room, they were all there, sitting, waiting for me, like a tribunal. Lydia was on the main armchair, her eyes swollen. Arthur sat beside her, his expression like stone. Eleanor held her coffee cup, looking at me with disdain. Arthur's brothers were in the background, like witnesses to my sentencing. Are you really going to do this? Lydia asked. Yes. Then we want our share, Arthur said, standing up. Your share? Of the money, from your mother's inheritance. Lydia has a legal right to a portion. No, she doesn't. That money was left to me, with specific instructions. We can fight that in court, he threatened. Go ahead, I said, feeling a strange calm. I have a lawyer, I have documents, and I have a will from my mother that specifies exactly what that money was for. I was lying again about the will, but it worked. I saw Arthur hesitate. You're a disgrace, Eleanor spat. A wretched old woman who's going to die alone. I'd rather die alone than live being used, I replied. My phone buzzed. It was the Uber. I've arrived. Gray sedan. I picked up my suitcase. I took a step toward the door. "Mom!" Lydia's voice stopped me. I turned. She was standing, one hand on her still flat stomach. "If you walk out that door, it's over. No more calls. No more visits. Nothing. Do you understand?" I looked at her. I really looked at her. And I saw a woman who had learned to use love as a weapon, to use emotion as a tool for manipulation. And I realized a terrible thing. I didn't know if she had ever truly loved me, or if she only loved what I could give her. "I understand," I said. "And I'm still leaving." I opened the door. The morning light flooded in like a wave. The cool air hit my face. I stepped outside. "Elizabeth!" Eleanor shouted from behind me. "This is abandonment. We can report you." I didn't turn back. I kept walking toward the gray car waiting at the curb. The driver got out and helped me with my suitcase. "Are you okay, ma'am?" he asked, probably seeing the look on my face. "I'm going to be," I answered. I got in the car. He closed the door. The engine started. And as we pulled away from that terracotta-colored house with the purple bougainvillea, I didn't look back. Not because I didn't want to, but because if I did, I might not have the courage to keep going. The ride to the bus station was a blur. I don't remember the streets. I don't remember the traffic lights. I just remember that my hands wouldn't stop shaking. At the station, I bought a ticket to Florida. The bus was leaving in 2 hours. I sat on a hard plastic bench, surrounded by travelers heading to their destinations with clear purposes. Work, family, vacation. I was running away. Was it cowardice? Or was it finally courage? My phone started vibrating. Texts from Lydia, one after another. "I can't believe you did this. You are the worst mother in the world. Arthur is right. You're mentally ill. When my child is born, you won't even know about it. I hope your selfishness is worth it." I read every message. Every word was a blow. But something strange happened. With each message, instead of feeling weaker, I felt more certain, because every insult confirmed that I had made the right choice. I blocked her number. I turned off the phone. I put it in my purse. An elderly woman sat down next to me. She carried a woven bag and smelled of cinnamon. "Going far, dear?" she asked kindly. "To Florida." "Oh, how lovely. You have family there?" "My sister." "That's good. Family is the most important thing, isn't it?" I smiled sadly. "Sometimes," I said, "the most important family is the one we choose, not the one we were given." She nodded wisely. "My daughter stopped speaking to me 3 years ago," she confessed, "because I wouldn't lend her money for a business I knew would fail. It hurt. Oh, how it hurt. But 3 years later, that business went bankrupt. And she never apologized. But I'm at peace now, because I learned I can't save anyone who doesn't want to be saved." Her words were like a balm. I wasn't alone. Other women had gone through this. Other mothers had been forced to choose themselves. "And you're okay?" I asked. "Better than ever." She smiled, and her wrinkles deepened. "I travel. I read. I take dance classes. I live. I truly live. I don't just exist to be useful to others anymore." When they called my bus, the woman hugged me. "God bless you, dear. And remember, it's never too late to start over." I boarded the bus. I found my seat by the window. I stowed my suitcase overhead. I sat down. The engine roared to life. And as the bus pulled out of San Antonio, as the streets I had known my whole life turned into a highway, as I left behind my house, my daughter, my entire life, I breathed. I took a deep, free breath. I was terrified, but I was free. And for the first time in 69 years, I didn't feel guilty for choosing myself. The trip to Florida took over 24 hours. 24 hours of highway, of stops in dusty terminals, of landscapes that changed from rolling hills to flat plains, from green to brown and back to green again. 24 hours in which every mile that separated me from San Antonio was a weight lifted from my chest. I slept in spurts, my head resting against the cold window. I had strange dreams. My mother as a young woman, washing clothes in the yard of our childhood home in Louisiana. My husband on our wedding day, smiling in that brown suit that was a size too big. Lydia at 5 years old, running toward me with open arms after her first day of school. But in the dream, when I hugged her, she turned to smoke. I woke with a start somewhere in Mississippi. The bus had stopped at a rest area. Passengers were getting off to stretch their legs, to buy sandwiches and sodas from the vending machines. I stayed in my seat. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't thirsty. I just had an enormous emptiness inside me that threatened to swallow me whole. A little girl ran down the aisle, chasing a small rubber ball. She stopped by my seat, smiling with her baby teeth. She reminded me of Lydia at that age, before the world had hardened her, or before I had let it. "Are you sad?" the little girl asked with the brutal honesty only children possess. "A little," I admitted. "My mommy says when you're sad you have to think of something happy, something that makes you smile. And what makes you happy?" "Ice cream," she said with absolute seriousness. "And puppies. And when my mommy sings to me before I go to sleep." Her mother appeared, apologizing for the intrusion. She took the little girl by the hand, but her words stayed with me. What made me happy? I tried to remember. When was the last time I had felt genuine happiness? Not the satisfaction of meeting an obligation, not the relief of finishing a chore, but pure, guilt-free happiness, with no purpose other than to exist. I couldn't remember, and that terrified me more than anything else. The bus rolled on. We crossed Alabama, then the Florida Panhandle. I watched small towns pass by the window, houses painted bright colors, churches with old bell towers, town squares where people gathered as if time didn't matter. I wondered what it would be like to live like that, without carrying the weight of expectations I could never fulfill. When we reached Central Florida, it was dark again. The sky was black velvet sprinkled with stars I never saw in San Antonio because of the city lights. I got off to stretch my legs while the bus refueled. The air smelled different here, of salt, of humidity, of something ancient and new at the same time. I walked to a rusted bench next to the station. I sat down. I took out my phone. I had kept it off for the whole trip, but something prompted me to turn it on. 53 messages. All from Lydia or from numbers I didn't recognize but suspected belonged to Arthur or his family. I didn't open them. Instead, I searched for the last text my mother had sent me before she died. I had saved it all these years. "Honey, just got out of the hospital. Doctors say I have 6 months, maybe a year if I'm lucky. Don't be scared. I lived a good life. I saw you grow up. I saw my granddaughter grow up. I've done my part. But promise me something. When I'm gone, you'll think about yourself. Just once. Just for one day. You'll ask yourself what Elizabeth wants. Not what Lydia needs. Not what the family expects. What Elizabeth wants. Promise me." I had replied, "I promise, Mom." Rest easy. But I had never kept that promise. Until now. I put the phone away. I turned it off again. I went back to the bus. We arrived in St. Petersburg at 6 in the morning. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in oranges and pinks that seemed unreal. The station was chaotic with vendors selling breakfast, taxi drivers shouting destinations, families saying goodbye or greeting each other with long hugs. I searched for Rose in the crowd, and then I saw her, my younger sister. 3 years younger, but she looked 10 years younger than me. Her hair was also gray, but she wore it short and stylish. She was wearing a yellow cotton dress and comfortable sandals. When our eyes met, she ran to me. We hugged in the middle of the station, and there, held by my sister, I finally cried. I cried for everything I hadn't cried on the bus, everything I hadn't cried when I left my house, everything I had held inside for years. It's okay, Rose whispered, stroking my hair like she did when we were girls and I had nightmares. You're here now. You're safe. We took a taxi to her house. She lived in a quiet neighborhood, in a small, one-story house painted seafoam green with wrought iron window grills. She had a front garden full of tropical plants I didn't recognize. Palms, heliconias, red flowers that looked like birds. It's not much, Rose said as she unlocked the door. But it's yours for as long as you need. The house smelled of fresh coffee and something baking. The walls were covered with paintings she had done herself, seascapes, abstract portraits, explosions of color that spoke of a woman who had found her voice. She showed me to my room. It was small but bright, with a single bed covered in a hand-knitted quilt, a nightstand with a reading lamp, and a window that looked out onto a backyard where a hammock was strung between two trees. "Sleep," Rose said. "Sleep as much as you need. I'll be here when you wake up." I lay down without even changing. The bed was firm but comfortable. The sheets smelled of lavender. A warm breeze came through the window, stirring the white gauze curtains. I closed my eyes, and I slept, deeply. No dreams, no nightmares, no guilt. I woke up 14 hours later. It was night again. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. I panicked. But then I heard soft music coming from somewhere in the house, and the smell of incense. And I remembered. I was in Florida. I was with Rose. I was safe. I got up slowly. My whole body ached, but it was a different kind of pain. Not the ache of arthritis or physical labor. It was the ache of muscles finally allowing themselves to relax after being tense for years. I left the room. I found Rose in the living room, reading a book under the light of a floor lamp. She looked up and smiled. "Hello, Sleeping Beauty. Are you hungry?" I was. For the first time in days, I was truly hungry. Not that anxious emptiness that masquerades as hunger, but a genuine desire for food. Rose heated up some chicken and rice soup. We ate together at a small wooden table in her kitchen. We didn't talk about Lydia. We didn't talk about what had happened. We just ate, and it was enough. Afterward, while we were washing the dishes, Rose finally asked, "Do you want to talk about it?" "I don't know what to say," I admitted. "I don't know if I did the right thing." "Do you feel relieved?" I thought about it. I searched inside myself for the honest answer. Yes, I feel relieved. And I feel terrible for feeling relieved. Rose dried a plate and looked at me with those eyes that were just like our mother's. "Liz, do you remember when Mom used to tell us the story about the fox and the trap?" I shook my head. "She'd say a fox can get its leg caught in a hunter's trap. And if it can't get free, it might make a terrible but necessary choice. To chew off its own leg. To save itself. To live. It will lose the leg. It will limp for the rest of its life. But it will live." Tears were rolling down my cheeks again. "Do you think I lost my daughter? I think you saved your life. And maybe, in time, your daughter will understand. Or maybe she won't. But either way, you'll be alive to see it." That night, I sat in the hammock in the backyard. The Florida sky was full of stars. More stars than I ever remembered seeing. It was warm, but it was a humid, living warmth, so different from the dry air of San Antonio. I heard crickets, frogs, the night sounds of a city that breathed differently. And for the first time in so long, I didn't think about what I had to do tomorrow. I didn't think about who needed what from me. I didn't think about how to solve other people's problems. I just was. I existed. I breathed. My phone was still off, tucked away at the bottom of my suitcase. It could have stayed there forever, and I wouldn't have cared. Because in that moment, swaying gently in a hammock under a sky full of unfamiliar stars, in a city where no one needed me for anything, I understood something fundamental. I hadn't lost my daughter. My daughter had lost me, years ago, when she decided I was only valuable for what I could give her, when she stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a resource. And I, finally, after 69 years, had decided that I deserved to be seen. I deserved to be valued. I deserved to exist for more than just to serve. I didn't sleep in my room that night. I stayed in the hammock, wrapped in a light blanket Rose brought me, swaying gently under the stars. And for the first time in years, I felt something like peace. It wasn't happiness yet. The wound was too fresh for that. But it was the first step, the first deep breath after drowning for so long. It was the beginning of something new, something terrifying, something unknown, but it was mine.